Was it Dean Evason's game-winning celebrations or empty net magic? What were your highlights of the first half of the Minnesota Wild season? We discuss today on Locked on Wild.
You're Locked on Wild, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Wild, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is happening, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Locked on Wild, your daily Minnesota Wild podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for making Locked on Wild your first listen every day. Just as a reminder, Locked on Wild is free and available wherever you listen to podcasts. On today's episode of Locked on Wild, Zach Zeman is back to help us recap the first half of the season. We'll also talk about the Wild's goalie situation, and we will look at Zach's thoughts on the Kevin Fiala, Matt Dumba offseason debacle. My name is Seth Topal, host of Locked on Wild, your captain, veteran leader of the show, and veteran with plenty of experience covering your favorite Minnesota sports teams through their highs and lows. We're joined by the alternate captain, regular contributor to Locked on Wild. Zach Zeman is back after a trip to a little bit warmer climate. So, Zach, welcome back.
Warmer climate. I mean, we just got hit with a ton of snow, so we've been sledding all day down here. They don't know how to clear it off the roads. They're not like MnDOT down here, but no, we've been making fun of the weather, having some fun. I mean, what a time to be alive with this team. We're heading into the break so high right now, and everything is clicking, everything's working. This team is awesome. Like, there's clearly a difference between the Wild, Avalanche, and then the rest of the Central. I personally believe. I think the Wild are up there. They've shown it the last couple games here. Everything's working. So, yeah, I'm happy to be back. Let's go.
9-1 heading into the All-Star break. Everything is clicking on the level that it should. And so as you alluded to, just a lot of fun to cover this team at this point in the season. Kind of wrap a neat and tidy bow around the first half of the season. We're literally right down the middle, 41 games in. So let's just jam out about some of the things that stood out. What were some of your big highlights from the first half of the year?
Definitely what we're seeing right now. Like, this is probably the best this team has looked all year, especially when you have, with the sub-in players. I mean, you're out Foligno and Dumba yesterday, and that doesn't matter. You still win 5-0. You get a shutout in the middle of it. And, it's like this team is the highest it's ever been this year. I can say that probably, and let's just agree with that. They're 6 in a row, I believe, heading to the All-Star break. They got 2 All-Stars, Cam Talbot, way to go. Kirill, Kaprizov, no doubt. This team's good. There's obviously something clicking here. It wasn't really clicking in the beginning of the year. It was a slow start, but now things are clicking. People are doing their jobs. The lines are great. There's almost nothing I would do personally to change up the lines right now. I mean, this is the greatest we've seen this team. So there's no doubt about that. My favorite part about the first half is right now, and it's insane to be saying that right now after their Blackhawks game last night as the time we're recording this. And yeah, what a high streak. It's great. What are your thoughts here? What was your best part of the first half of the season? Let's go.
My favorite part of the first half of the year was the statistical anomaly that is empty net magic. I have never seen anything like this. And shout out to Jesse Pierce of the Bar Down Beauties podcast, who had Matt Dumba on their most recent episode. It was A+. Dumba even said that he has never been a part of anything like this. The team gets down by 1, 2, 3, 4, any number of goals, and they pull the goalie. They go to the 6-on-5, and they have scored. I think the updated tally was 13 6-on-5 goals this season. It has been anywhere from pulling the goalie with 9 minutes left to go in the game against Dallas and also in the Winter Classic. But I can't wrap my head around the physics of turning it into a weapon and turning it into something that can drastically increase this team's ability to score. And obviously it's like a power play, but you have an empty net on the other end. All the other team has to do is get control of the puck and fling it down to the other end, and they have a really good chance to score and put the game out of reach. And more often than not, they don't. And more often than not, the Wild get 1-2 goals. They have multiple instances this year already of being down by 2, coming back to tie the game and to send it to overtime when they had zero business being in the final equation. It is absolute chaos, but whatever the Wild did, whatever gods the Wilds, whatever hockey gods the Wilds performed rituals to make it a thing, bravo, because it is just the most hilarious chaos that exists, and it's just part of the overall equation that is this Wild team this year.
Yeah, there's 2 parts to it, right? This team 4 years ago would never have scored an empty netter and forced into overtime, nevertheless even win. But this team, 13 goals, 13 empty net goals, but you get those goals, which is extremely hard to do. You're risking your game. But then you finish it in overtime, and this team has an insane rate of finishing games after, regulation. I mean, a couple teams would just settle for 1 point and call it a day, and like, all right, we got 1. We're good in the standings. It's like we played, but when this team just is on that high horse, like they have been the 13 times they've scored empty netters. You finish games in overtime and you head in the locker room after Dean Evason shoves his coaches all over the place, and then you go in the locker room and you celebrate. I mean, that's probably the best atmosphere this team's ever had in its history. I can guarantee you that. The Parisian Suitor led, it would have been, all right, let's go home and go to practice the next day. But this team's like, let's go, like we just did that. Like, and let's do it again, and let's do it 13 times. It's not just a one-time deal. This team obviously has something up until the last whistle. It's a special team, and there's a reason they're up there in the standings right now, no doubt.
Who's the first half MVP? Dean Evason's overtime win celebrations, or Kirill Kaprizov's effortless move in the shootout?
Oh my gosh, dude. Talking about that move, and even Fiala's doing it now. It's just like the team is just doing it. They're just doing it. The charisma is insane. I mean, even Kaapo Kahkonen, when he comes in there and after Talbot's been hurt for a while, you don't even know when Talbot's going to be back, and Kaapo steps up and takes those games. I mean, that's a huge part, too, of the first half of the season. I mean, everyone is just questioning. We'll talk about this later, but everyone's questioning. Is Kaapo Kahkonen it? Is he really going to do this for us? And yeah, he will, and he did. And now the Wild have a great goalie tandem, and I'm so sick of it now that people are still, saying that we don't and stuff. But we'll talk about that later. I mean, Kaapo Kahkonen should not be slept on in the first half.
No, he definitely shouldn't. I'm going with Dean Evason's.
Yeah, sorry, I went off track.
No, totally
it's just in my head.
The game-winning celebrations from Dean Evason are unparalleled. His coaches are going to have to start wearing like the flak jackets that quarterbacks wear when they take rib shots.
The Kirk Cousins,
it's the best. One thing I do want to throw out before we go to break for the listeners, I am trying to come up with a team in the Minnesota sports landscape to compare this to. So drop it in the comments on YouTube. I was not as big of a sports fan at that point, and obviously it was right around the time that you were born. Where does this Wild team compare with the 1998 Minnesota Vikings? That's as close of a comparison as I can come up with from what I've seen.
You want You wanted me to give you a comparison of the 2021, 2022 Minnesota Vikings? If these players could gritty on the ice, they'd be doing it. I can guarantee you that. I can guarantee you that.
I like that. So yeah, just let us know in the comments if that's a fair assessment or if either team is better than the other. It's a main point. Tremendously fun first half of the season, and we have no reason to suspect that things won't go anywhere but up in the second half. So we'll continue to keep an eye on things, and we will, of course, as we move towards next week and the resumption of the season, we'll look at some of the big factors heading into the second half of the year. But for now, we are going to turn our attention to the goalie situation because Zach is here to provide some a voice of reason for team the goalies are fine. And so we will discuss that and more when we continue today's episode of Locked On Wild after this. It is 2022, and that means New Year's resolutions are in full swing. So if you are looking for an opportunity to eat better and to get yourself in a little better shape, may I present to you Built Bar. Built Bar is the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. Scratch that. Tastes better than a candy bar. So if you're looking for a great treat to help you stay in shape, Built Bar is the best place to go. Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate. Most contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. You can compare that to a candy bar, which usually has around 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and dozens of net carbs. So take as many Built Bars as you can handle. Replace all of the sweets in your secret stashes and let Built Bar do the rest. If you head to Built.com right now, you can use promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off of your order. Again, use the promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. Continuing today's episode of Locked On Wild. Again, thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen every day, and do this pretty much every show. But again, we're going to thank the listeners for continuing to help this show shatter records. We did it again after last week's greatest week ever in the history of this show. Did it again. We upped it again. So thank you to the listeners for all of the support, all of the interaction, and for making this as fun as it feasibly can be. Seth Topol hanging out with Zach Zeman, and Zach, goalie spots has been a little bit of a trending topic for this Minnesota Wild team, but you are on the side of team we're all good. Mm-hmm. So just tell us about what you have seen from Kaapo and Talbot to suggest that the goalie situation is not the problem it appears to be.
Well, I've seen great hockey from both of them. I don't really know where to start here, but once Cam Talbot gets hurt in that Winter Classic, and everyone is wondering, is Kaapo really going to step up and help this team out in times where they need him and they don't know when the starter's going to come back? And that was a huge topic back then, and people are, do we really go shoot for a goalie if we want to be a contender in this playoffs? And do we really got to get a great goalie like Marc-Andre Fleury, let's say? Do we have to have a leader where you don't even need to worry about switching out your goalies every once in a while? You can rely on your starter to play back-to-backs and stuff like that. But after watching Kaapo Kahkonen successfully win games by himself and save this team in times where they were in shambles in late games, it's insane. I'm telling you right now that this should not be a topic anymore after this podcast. It literally should never be. The Wild should never be looking at goalies, especially in this trade deadline. They obviously have bigger problems if they really want to make a run later. These goalies are stepping up to their game. I'll just say that right now. It's done. Like, it's literally done. Cam Talbot is, although let's put this argument out there. Cam Talbot just got his first shutout of the year. The last game before, or the last game in the first half of the season, it took him 42 games, or 41 games. He's not shutting out. He's not winning games. Well, I'll tell you this: when you have an offense like this team is emulating right now, you don't even need to save every single shot. You don't even need to rely on your goalie to save every shot when you have this Kaprizov, Zuccarello, Hartman line and the Grief line. I mean, you just don't need to worry about it. And once, I mean, and to talk about the defense, I mean, let's just talk about Spurgeon, Brodin, Dumba. They've all missed games by now, and they've all been out in some weird lineup combination where the goalies still win these games. Last night, Dumba was out, and we still won 5-0. You know, it's just like, and usually, I'll just use the Vegas Golden Knights last year for an example. Marc-Andre Fleury, great goalie, but also he's behind a great defense.
Yep.
And a great offense. Obviously, that whole team is structured perfectly. But then you put him on this Blackhawks team where they don't have a good defense, and that's not necessarily an offense anymore. And you see how much he struggles.
Yeah,
There's a difference between being a good goalie on a great hockey team and a good goalie on a bad hockey team, is that you can't solely win games for these bad hockey teams. You just can't do it. And it's not his fault, and he was getting frustrated over it yesterday. But in reality, it's not his fault because the Blackhawks are really not having the year they want. Just using that as an example from yesterday's game.
Well,
yeah.
And not to cut you off, but like to your point, you look at some of the games in which the Wild have given up the most goals is when Brodin and Spurgeon were both out.
Yeah.
And, you know, we talk about how good of seasons guys like John Merrill and Dmitry Kulikov have had. It's when they are in the spots that they were asked to hold down before the season started. And if you're pulling guys up to play, you know, Merrill has played that top line D. Kulikov has played that top line D. Jordy Ben has played on that top line D pairing as well. Those guys, despite what they bring to the table, just are not Spurgeon and Brodin.
Yeah. And they've been playing inconsistent hockey, and it's hard to rely, you know, on Jordy Ben. Yeah, Jordy Ben's been playing recently, but he also wasn't earlier. And Kalen Addison, you know, Kalen Addison's constantly on call here because he knows he's the next man in if that decor, you know, is gone. So it's inconsistent hockey for those guys. They don't know when they're going to play next, and it's all just a jumble for them. But once you get these players consistently playing like they have been, you know, it's a great hockey team. And I don't think that there's ever going to be a worry right now this season with the goalies. And I would like to put that to rest. And hopefully people start to ride the train that, all right, we can finally rely on our goalies and our defense, because we have a great defense in front of the goalies. It's going to be okay. And the great offense. Wow. It sounds like Vegas last year, you know, but yeah, it's fine. You got Spurgeon, Brodin, and Dumba in front of Talbot and Kahkonen, who have been playing stellar hockey. I think we're going to be okay moving forward.
And here's the other point that is a valid one to make, is that we have over a month until the trade deadline. Mm-hmm. So if for some reason there was an injury to Kaapo or Cam Talbot, the cupboard is not totally empty as some have suggested. I mean, you do have Andrew Hammond, who could be a backup, but at that point, if you have somebody that is going to be out for any sort of extended amount of time, then maybe Bill Guerin does hop in and say, let's go get somebody. Please, just not Martin Jones.
But that's also if there's a terrible injury and worst comes to worst, and at the bottom, you know, when you're all desperate, of course you're going to make that goalie because you need them. You need two great goalies for playoffs in order to make it far. You just do, and I'll talk about this later. But the Avalanche, I can tell you right now, and hopefully this doesn't, you know, this ages well. Hopefully it ages well, but I can't see them getting past the second round. Because I don't think they can rely on Kemper like that. I just don't think so. Kemper was on the Wild. Kemper's been jumping around with the Coyotes. Now he's with the Avalanche, and you know it's stuff like that. But they don't have. I don't really know who their backup is. That should say a lot, you know.
Yeah, it's that Frank Hughes, isn't it?
Oh, probably, yeah. But
even then, he's a rookie, if not a 1 or 2 year in the league.
Yeah. I don't think that, you know, if you have, they have that defense too. They have Cale Makar on a hot streak. Of course, they're gonna, you know, it's a good defense, like the Wild have, and a good goalie, you know, and a medium-ish goalie to some Wild fans extent. You know, Talbot's not it, you know. People are saying that, but You don't need a great goalie once you have a good defense, and the Avalanche have a good defense. And I do think that Talbot is better than Kemper. I think the tandem is better than Kemper too. I'd rather have two, above average goalies than Kemper. I don't know.
Can you imagine how mad Darcy's going to be if the Wild would beat the Avalanche in the playoffs?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. was he the? Oh wait, no, that was Brizgalov, wasn't it? Didn't Brizgalov finish that Game 7 in 2014? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say, was he in that? No.
Ilya. Yeah. Darcy does not like the Wild by any stretch of the imagination, and some of that stems to his exit. But
stuff happens. Stuff happens. Ryan Suter, you get bought out. Yeah, you're not gonna like the Wild. It happens.
Boy, I didn't realize this. I was listening to the latest Judd's hockey show, and Dean Evason apparently just works in how much better this clubhouse culture is this year than in previous seasons, like every chance he gets.
Oh, I bet.
Wow.
Yeah.
But
that should say a lot. Having a great locker room helps teams. It just does. When you have a great chemistry with your teammates, of course you're gonna, flow in the game better, and you're not gonna be like, oh, I wonder what they're thinking. I've never played on professional ice before, and it's like, if you have grudges against some of your teammates, stuff's not going to happen. The chemistry's not going to be there, and you're not going to win hockey games. That's just how it is.
Yep.
So, this team's culture is completely different. They're winning hockey games. This is much better than Parise and Suter's era of hockey already. We can say that, no question. And it's just great. Oh, what a time! What a time!
No question. Next question. We'll finish, obviously, earlier in the week, had a chance to go full deep dive into a big offseason topic for the Minnesota Wilds as to whether or not the Wild will have to make a big decision between Kevin Fiala or Matt Dumba. And so we'll finish off today by getting Zach's reaction to my thoughts on the situation. We'll get his stance on it as well. More to come on today's episode of Locked On Wild. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before as football continues its march through the playoffs right to the big game in a couple of weeks. BetOnline.net remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just football. BetOnline has up-to-the-minute info on pro and college hoops, the NHL, boxing, UFC, along with real, live updates of current games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the new amazing offers available for the 2022 season. You can find all of it at BetOnline, where the game starts. Final segment of today's episode of Locked On Wild. Again, thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen every day. Seth Topal hanging out with Zach Attack, Zach Zeman. And Zach, obviously, I had a chance to fully dive in. Pros and cons of, I'll preface, if the Wild have to make a decision on one of those guys in the offseason. They may not, but if they do, I'm over here in team trade Matt Dumba camp. I know you're on the other end of the debate as of right now. So give me your standpoint, your logic, your reasoning as to why it's Kevin Fiala who should be the one that's traded.
Okay. Where do I begin? Let's talk about Matt Dumba just because. Matt Dumba's been with this team since when I can remember. He's been here for both expansion drafts, right? They've kept him for a reason. I don't think Dumba's going to be moved. I just don't, because they've held on to him. They obviously see something in him that can help this team. I don't know what it is, if it's in the locker room, if it's in the play. He's a great hockey player nevertheless. He's a great defenseman. He's showed it. He gets a lot of hate, but let's be honest, he's doing his job. All right, he's doing his job.
Yeah,
right.
And
now, go ahead.
Just to quick inject this in.
Yeah.
Bill Guerin has gone out of his way multiple times to say that Matt Dumba is a huge piece of what this team is doing. So that is a point that I forgot about earlier in the week, but that is a point that absolutely carries weight in this as well.
Seriously, it does. The fact that he's been here through 2 expansion drafts when fans have like, oh, put him up. You know, he's the answer here. The Wild are with him. I can guarantee that. Okay. Now, Kevin Fiala, before Matt Boldy came into the conversation, was slumping. He was missing all of his shots. I think he was on record for the most not goals in all the shots he's taken, or some crazy. It was a really specific stat like that. He was leading the league in expected goals and not achieving them, or something like that. It's a stat like that. I remember them showing it several times. But when you bring Matt Boldy up here and you see the charisma between both of them, it's extremely relieving. First of all, second of all, I just think that Kevin Fiala needs Matt Boldy. And I'll just say that right now because we've seen Kevin Fiala's streaks, right? We've seen his streaks with his points right now. He's on a high note, just like the rest of the team is, with Boldy on his line. That happened. That's confirmed. He's killing it ever since Boldy's joined this line. Okay. Now, Boldy, on the other hand, this is an opinion of mine, but I believe Boldy is an elite playmaker. I think he's fit into this lineup like butter on toast. All right. He's here. He's amazing. He's a great hockey player. And I think he doesn't need Fiala as much as Fiala needs him. Because I just think that. And I think that because the whole Granlund trade for Fiala and the whole thing of Fiala coming in this organization and being a staple, that was the plan, and he wasn't doing well before Boldy got here, but Boldy's making him well, and they're both generating off of each other.
Mm-hmm.
And it's great hockey, but I just think Boldy is cheaper and better than Fiala. I'll just say that because if you're looking, well, he's not better like I don't really know who's better because it's Boldy's, rookie years, 10 games into his career. Right. And he has 10 points, by the way, like I'm telling you, ever since Boldy came into this team and he's gotten 10 points in his first ever 10 NHL games, and Fiala starts generating points along with Boldy once Boldy gets here. But before that, he was slumping. And I think that now with those two running off of each other, if you really want to make a move and get rid of Fiala, he has insane trade capital right now. I think you can really get a lot of Fiala right now because of his explosiveness in the recent days. But back then, a month ago, heck no one's going to really go after him because he's not generating much on his own. But hey, if you're a team looking for a Kevin Fiala player and you have a player that you think can fit with him on your team, and just like Matt Boldy's doing, I think you can go for it. I think the Wild can hopefully get more back with that. If not, then it's probably not going to work. But I'm just saying right now, with how Kevin Fiala has been playing, I think is a lot to say in the trade deadline. And yeah, I just believe that. I think it's always good to get two perspectives. You hammered it home the other day on your podcast on here of why they should keep Fiala and stuff. And I respect it completely. But I just think that, seeing a new perspective on things is pretty interesting, especially with, Locked On Wild in general. I mean, it's always good to hear both sides. So that's what I'm thinking. I don't think they should, focus too much. I don't know. Okay,
yeah.
Don't listen to me there. I'm running out of words.
It does. It is a good point that you brought up too, because that was another one that I didn't hit on, is the whole maximizing the trade value thing. And I think we're both pretty adamant on team, if it ain't broke, don't fix it through the season.
Yes.
But as I alluded to, and I'll hammer home again, it's in the offseason, there's going to be this is going to be something that's going to need to be addressed. So, we're simply throwing out scenarios as to what they could do when it gets to that point. But again, for right now, keep what is working together, deal with off-season questions in the off-season. Just let this team continue to just stack up wins, be an absolute tank, a juggernaut. Just continue to steamroll through both conferences. Because let's be real, I like the Wild against anybody in the NHL right now, and so does MoneyPuck.com. Wild have the best odds at this moment to win. To win, wrap your head around that. To win the Stanley Cup at 11%. They're the only team in double digits for percentage to win, not to get to win the Stanley Cup. So obviously a lot of people buying into what this team is selling. And why not? Because it's been just a blast to cover. And I don't see any reason why it's going to slow down.
Yeah, let's talk about this right now. The Wild are sitting in Money Puck right now, which is I think Money Puck is great. I believe they're almost always right with all their projections and stuff. I always go to them. Always. They're great. They have the Wild 11.2% chance to win the cup. I think then it goes Hurricanes 10.2, then it's the Avalanche 9.4, Maple Leafs 9.1, Lightning 8.9. and so on. And I think it's Penguins at 7. But you can just man, who would have thought? I mean, come on. The Wild haven't seen this. Heading into the All-Star game with the highest percent chance to win the cup at a very credible source, I believe. Man, there's something here. And I will say that I believe the Wild are a better team than the Avalanche in the playoffs. They're probably going to lose a couple regular season games. Like that's just going to happen. Maybe not against Chicago, but it's going to happen against the Avalanche. But when playoff time comes, the Wild have a great matchup for them. I think they can beat the Blues, but they're going to have to walk into that series with the Blues that they've been dominated by the Blues the last couple of years, and they've been blah, blah, blah. The Blues had the Wild's number all last year, and they've been just dominating the Wild and everything. I will be at that game. I think it's April 8th in St. Louis. I'll be there.
Ooh.
Yeah. So I'll provide some coverage here and see what the atmosphere is like there with all the Wild fans that do make their way over. But I'm telling you, the Wild, I think the only teams here, I don't think the Predators are the real deal. I'll tell you that. I think they're going to fall down a little bit. And I think the Blues, it's going to go, okay, let's just keep the Avalanche up there because they're way too good right now. Avalanche, Wild, Blues. And I think it's a roll the dice. I think anyone is good in that spot. Maybe the Predators keep it up, and maybe I might be wrong, but in the near future here, we might see some really good playoff matches for the Wild.
Remember how good the Vegas Golden Knights were last year, and it came down to the final couple of games of the season to determine who got home ice.
Yeah, and you talk about them last year. They were a great team last year, and the Wild were still up there with them.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean,
you.
And now they get rid of Marc-Andre Fleury, who's like the guy in Vegas, the first guy they ever picked in their team history from the expansion draft. They get rid of him, and now they added Jack Eichel, which is still to be determined here, and when he's going to start playing. Is he playing? I don't know. I haven't been keeping up with that.
I think he's due to debut. Ooh, that's catchy. In March.
Okay. They're going to start to turn it up. I mean, that's just obvious. Jack Eichel's going to be happy with that team. Don't get me wrong. But they're still up there with the Vegas Golden Knights, and I think the Wild are the real deal. I know this is a Wild podcast, and they're always supposed to be let's go Wild, but this is a legit NHL team. This is how high it gets. I mean, you can't tell me you're watching these games and you're scared that the goalies are going to let in goals, or you're scared that the Wild are going to lose, like you used to back then. No, this team's legit. They proved it last night. I mean, I know it's Chicago, but when you get a 5-0 shutout in Chicago on an away game, it's big news. This is legit.
They're steamrolling people, and if I'm Colorado, I'm looking in that rearview mirror, and what looked to be nobody behind you even a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah,
the Wild are like
this. The second in the West points percentage behind the Avalanche. So they're the top two teams in the West.
the Wild have come up over the hill to where Colorado now, and anybody can relate to this. Like you're driving at night and there's nobody else on the road. And you go over like a hill and all of a sudden you see headlights behind you. It is all you can think about. It's all you can.
It actually is. That
You're
actually is. You can't
you're
even
like-
enjoy your music.
You're like, who is that? Who is that? How far back are they? What are they doing?
Yeah. Yep.
And the next thing you know, they're right behind you and they pass you.
And then you make eye contact, like, oh, hey.
And you look as the car is passing you, and it's Bill Guerin waving.
And it's a green, red, and green and red Lamborghini.
Buckle up, folks.
Yeah, it's time.
Second half's going to be unbelievable.
Yeah.
That will put a wrap on today's episode of Locked On Wild. So now that your first listen of the day is done, make sure you head over to the Locked On NHL podcast. Locked On experts giving you all the information you need on your favorite teams throughout the NHL in 30 minutes or less. Locked On NHL is available wherever you listen to podcasts. Just like Locked On Wild, listen to us wherever you listen to podcasts. Make sure to slap down a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify, depending on where you listen in. Also follow us on our social media channels as well. Keeping you up to date on all things Minnesota hockey so that if major news or a puck drop anywhere in the state of hockey, Locked On Wild has you covered with new episodes every Monday through Friday as part of the Locked On Podcast Network.